Hey, welcome to Tank Talk. I'm your host, Bob Tankard. And this evening's guest is the Honorable Dr. Lawrence Jones. And if I start reading his resume, we might take the whole show on that. But I just wanted to let you know that Dr. Jones is a polymath thought leader, award-winning author, a keynote speaker, and an accomplished practitioner for over 30 years of global experience and energy industry. Doc, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You know what I mean? We're looking forward to you. And you know, an amazing thing, when you have a program coming up here called The Minds Across the Vineyard, and you have probably like 6 or 8 individuals coming to present. But I want to ask you something. As I went through your resume and your background, I said to myself, I want to ask him the question of what made him get involved in this, and how did it happen?
Well, so I was born in Liberia.
Okay.
And educated there. Left, went to Sweden.
You have brothers and sisters?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was the youngest, and my father was an engineer, my mother was a nurse. And after my education, like I said, I went to Sweden, got my doctorate, and I've been working in energy for the last 30 years, right?
Okay.
And I've worked internationally most of my career. And about 5 years ago, I said to my wife, I said, you know, I'd like to get a second PhD. And she reminded me.
The first one wasn't enough. Huh?
Exactly.
That wasn't tough enough.
And
huh?
she reminded me that you have 3 young kids and a wife. And I said, okay, then I'll do it my way. And by that I meant, and that's what, you know, in my bio it talks about polymathic thinking, because most of our leaders of the past were self-taught. You know, if you all go all the way back, a lot of African-American leaders, they taught themselves things. And I said, why can't I teach myself a topic that I was so passionate about, which is neuroscience? And because I love complex things, and I love to make complex things simple. And so the last 3 or 4 years, I've been studying the brain, understanding neuroscience as a hobby, which is weird when I tell people it's a hobby. Why would you pick such a thing? Because the brain touches everything in our lives. I mean, everything about it is the brain, right? And the brain and the energy systems are quite similar, because the energy system, you know, you have transmission lines, distribution lines. Well, the brains, you have neurons and you have synapses. And so the more I started looking at the correlation between the brain and the energy system, which I spend a lot of my time on, I said, this is fascinating. And then I met a gentleman, Harris.
Was that part of your father's engineering experience coming into you?
Well, it was more so. It was more of my own interest, because I was just I love music. So if you take music, you take speaking, which I also like to do. Everything comes back to the brain, and so. Long story short, there was a gentleman. He's invited to be here as well, Harris Air. Unfortunately, he won't be here in person because he just had a son. But Harris and I were on the phone talking, and we're talking about what makes the brain healthy. And he's giving me a list. He's a neuroscientist, a real neuroscientist, right? Well, you need to get enough sleep, exercise, and he's giving me all the things you shouldn't do. Don't have your cell phone in your bedroom when you go to bed at night, you know, and nutrition.
I got to tell that to my daughter and her kids about not having a cell phone connected to their ears.
To their ears. But then he, as the conversation finishes, my daughter is hearing the conversation, and then she helps me to remind myself that I do not have a healthy brain habit, because everything Harris said I should be doing, I wasn't doing. I was doing the reverse. And so the more I thought about this, I began to work with Harris and really look at the whole brain and the brain economy. And I said, you know, this is so interesting. So last year when I was here, because I've been coming to the island for a while now in the summer, I said to my wife, I said, you know what, this thing about the brain, given, you know, issues like dementia, Parkinson, is really affecting minority communities, affecting many communities, but especially minority communities for a variety of reasons. I said, I'd like to do something on the island to sort of raise awareness. And so I started just thinking about this idea. The last couple of years, I've traveled, you know, I was in Brussels at the Brussels Brain Conference, but I'm not a neuroscientist, and I find myself in a group with all these neuroscientists, and I'm like, okay, guys, how do you take all this information and give it to those who really need to hear it? Because at the end of the day, I don't want what happened with diabetes and cancer to be what, you know the science, but you don't tell people about the science until it was late. And so the idea was, can we begin to inform, educate, raise awareness about what we can do to improve our brain health? Bob, one of the things I should share with your audience, around the world today, in July, there was the World Brain Day. There are over 3 billion people on the planet who have some form of neurological disorder.
Why?
A range of reasons. Nutrition, poverty, poor health hygiene,
Okay.
a range of things, right? Overuse of technology, chronic stress is a
Okay.
big issue. So the idea then was, how do you do this? But to end your question, 4 weeks ago I damaged my back, and I was having a lot of back pain, and
Now, I want you to help me with that because at my age, I'm getting that too.
well, and so on the second week, I couldn't go back upstairs. And so my wife said, well, why don't you just sleep in the basement, right? So I just sleep in the basement in the guest room. On July 2nd, I'm in the guest room, about to go to bed, and then I realized, wait, July 2nd, 2021 was the day my mom passed.
Ooh.
And she passed in the exact same room I was sleeping in. Now, here's the moral of the
Okay.
story.
All right.
My mom's biggest gripe against me was always, Lawrence, you need to rest. You need to take care. You're traveling too much. You're traveling. And lo and
Listen
behold,
to your moms. They're
and lo and
forever, man.
behold-
They're forever.
and lo and behold, the day my back is cracked up and I can't do nothing, I'm lying in a bed where she died in that
right.
same room, being reminded. Anyway, so this has been something I've been thinking about a lot. How can we educate and inform people about the brain
Right.
health? But it's also an economic issue.
Okay.
Because economic productivity across the world, today the World Economic Forum, a lot of the European Investment Bank and other entities, the Davos Alzheimer's collaboration, they've now estimated together with McKinsey that there is probably $12 trillion of economic loss because of all kinds of brain issues. And so in terms of an economic development, take Martha's Vineyard, for example, this community could probably be losing a lot of economic productivity because of stress, because of absenteeism at the offices. And so it's not just a health issue. Brain health is also an economic issue.
Okay.
And that's something that I'm passionate about. Long answer, but yeah.
One of the things I'm looking at, in your say, you should explain what an ecosystem builder is. What is that? But I also wanted to say, when we're talking about Alzheimer's disease and dementia and whatnot, yeah, I had two sisters. One's got it now and one passed with it, right? And I'm saying, you mentioned something about the science in it and people with the technology about it and knowing something. But have they come to the point where they can remedy these things in a more productive way than they're doing it now? Or do these things have to run its course and then it is what it is? Can they fix it? Put it that way.
So the long answer, first of all, once it's started, because these are all degenerative diseases, right? So it's not much of they can't stop it if it's gone along so far. But what they can do is they can slow it down. They can also avoid, to some extent, it occurring at a certain pace because of the things they're doing now.
Do they have to do operations to slow it down, or through medicines, or through some type of therapy, or whatever?
So at this summit, at the forum we're having here, there will be a couple of neuroscientists who will be talking about things that you can do to improve your brain health. The complexity with some of these neurological diseases is that they may not know exactly everything about it, but they're beginning to identify markers that they can actually help you to identify when there are triggers, there are things that could be happening, there are signs that you see happening, right? Because the brain, we have to exercise our brain. And so, for example, one of the speakers who's going to be here, Dana Holland, her mother, and she's going to tell that story, her mother passed of, I think it was dementia, Parkinson, and she talks about...
But it seems like more people today are passing with that.
Yes.
More so than it was ever before.
Well, again, and that's what the science is saying, because we're not focusing on brain health. We're not focusing on the things that are causing these things to happen. We know what's causing it. We just don't know exactly what makes it happen when it happens. And so, clearly, if you take care of your brain and your brain health, you minimize the risk of the onset of these kinds of diseases, right? Now, you may still do all of this, and the brain is complicated, so something may still happen. But it's about reducing the risk. It's about minimizing the chances of it occurring. And today, the science is showing that if you do these different things, you actually slow down the risk of it happening. And if you do have it, it slows the progression.
Here's your question. A person that lives to be 90 to 100, do you think they have used these functions even though they didn't know about them, and consequently their bodies adjusted and consequently let them live in a long period, even though they didn't know what they were doing. You know, the island, Martha's Vineyard, because of the clean air, we don't have factory things around. And the pace on the island isn't like the summer. Like in the summer, you see everybody moving. But most island people, well, a lot of them won't go in the store when it's real busy. They'll go early in the morning. They don't like to go into the traffic. And sometimes they don't even go to the beaches where a lot of people go because that's not our nature. Our nature is laid back. Things are slow. And consequently, I have to say, our life expectancy, is larger. It's up in your 80s. Like I'm 80 right now.
Well, you don't look it.
You know what I mean? Yeah, but I'm saying my wife is 83 and she doesn't look it. And I'm saying to myself, well, I got some things that are wrong, but I feel good. And I go to the gym still and whatnot. You know, to let people know, we're talking about global challenges. And I look down here, you talked about water mining, brains and health. I didn't understand all that.
They're all interconnected.
Okay.
So part of the issue with the brain has one property is that it constantly adapts.
Right.
It constantly, this notion of neuroplasticity means it can always, fix itself, right? Self-healing. Now, there's a notion, the myth, that the older you get, the more susceptible you are to all these things, right? And you can't think. Well, it's not really true because the brain is always learning.
Right.
The issue is, what do you do with the brain? And one of the things we do in the developed world, in my view, is that as you age, you put aside. And your brain is sort of if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So
Right.
you gotta,
Right.
so that's why I joke and say I will never retire because I don't want my
Thank
brain
you.
to
Thank
atrophy.
you. Say
right?
that loud and clear, because I tell everybody the same thing.
Yep,
When you leave one place, just go to another.
You should.
And start a new beginning.
Because if you don't use this thing, you lose it. It's like it's not a muscle, but it behaves like a muscle because it loves the challenge. And so what is happening today, coming back to your question, Bob, like the Vineyard and other island nations and places where there's not high stress, you see that high blood pressure, for example, correlated to issues around brain health, stress, brain health, right? So all the things that lead to or increase the likelihood of having these neurological diseases, you don't find them on islands. So you don't find them in places where you don't have, excessive development.
Right.
So and this is the challenge we have as a global community. Our sophistication in development, the lifestyle we have, the stress, the fast pace, our brains were not designed for that. Our brains were not designed for the world we've created.
Right.
And the challenge we have is, how do you reimagine the world where you actually live according to what your brain wants you to do and you don't fast track your brain? Our brains were not developed to deal with this fast pace of technological change, right? So we're stressing the brain. We're stressing it so much so that we don't even realize it. So people who live to be 100, if they've done a study in Japan, why they live so long? Because they live a very calm life. They don't stress their brain, but they also activate their brain. They're walking, they're reading, they're doing
They have
things.
community exercise programs.
Community. Bob, this is going to shock you and your audience. You know one of the biggest causes of neurological problems?
What?
Isolation and loneliness.
Wow.
Now think about it in the.
Well, I can understand it because you're not communicating with anything or anybody.
It is. And one of the authors, who's going to be Michael Sort, with his book is out called Brain Capitalist. Michael talks about in his book what happens when our brain, which is a social thing, it loves correlation between people. When you remove that isolation, loneliness, guess what? The brain doesn't have what the brain likes. The brain likes activities. So if you go to Africa, communal systems of living, where you're in a village and you have people to play with, it's a whole different thing. Tell you a short story. Before my mom died, she had one plea. I do not want to die in a nursing home. And I said, why? Because I don't want to die alone. And I said, why? Because I want to die with dignity. I want to die with people around me.
Praise God.
And so I think, coming back to your question, I think it's so important. There are ways we're living today that our brains were not designed or evolved for that form of living. And so you see people trying to change it. That's why people who live in the big cities like to get away, because guess what? They want to slow down. Now, if you can't afford it, coming back to the sort of the poverty and the injustice around brain health, is if you can't afford a vacation, if you can't afford to leave the inner city where you have all the noise and the pollution and what have you, then what do? And so part of what we're trying to do with this forum, Minds Across the Vineyard, is to raise awareness and say, okay, look, there are things you can do. The other thing we're going to talk about is young people. they're beginning now to see dementia or neurological diseases occurring
And
earlier
younger
on,
people,
younger
early.
people, very early. Now, why is that? Because those young brains are not developing the way they should. There was a study done in Australia where they discovered that 3-year-old, they did a brain scan. 3-year-old, their brain, there's something called myelin, their brains are not developing the way they should. 3-year-old, why? Screen time. They're spending so much time on the screens. So countries, Finland, Sweden, Norway, and other countries, they're actually now taking computers out of the schools.
Well, I want to ask you that. I want to talk about it for a second. I see in this country, you see kids at 1, their parents are putting them a machine in front of them, and they're playing with these computer machines, right? In the public school systems in the United States, right, every kid's got a computer. So they're in the classroom sometimes on their phone and dealing with things without focusing on what the teacher sometimes wants to do. I can't help to think that in 2 reasons. Too much of this technology and AI thing is taking away from the valuable learning process of a young person and filling their minds with a bunch of, I want to say garbage, some of it. You know what I mean? And consequently, not allowing them to think clearly and process clearly.
Yeah. You're right. And I think part of the challenge we're having now, and the science is beginning to speak to this, right, is that, look, technology has a place, right? I mean, we're having this conversation, we have technology to beam out, right? But when you allow technology to take over the cognitive ability that you should develop, then you have a problem. There was a study, a paper just came out in Atlantic. I think it was 25 to 30% of Americans in the last couple of years have not read a single book. Now think about it. I think it was 30% haven't read a book. Or only 30% have read a book, actually.
Is it because they're on those computers?
Well, for many reasons. They've often looked at the correlation that this trend started as when the iPhone sort of began to sort of accelerate, right?
Yep.
So now, because everything is instant,
Right.
I don't want to read a book. I just want it quick. Remember what I said. The brain was not designed for this accelerated pace of change. Well, now if
we don't have
if
encyclopedias anymore.
No, and if you don't have the patience
Right.
to read,
Right.
guess what? It's just speed.
Right.
So comprehension is lost. You're giving all this information, processing is lost. And so the brain is adapting to, okay, well, since I wasn't designed for this, and Bob, you don't want to slow it down, you want to keep swiping this stuff, I'm going to adapt myself to you, Bob. And as a result, the things the brain is supposed to be doing, regenerating itself, like when you sleep, that's when the brain sort of gets its thing together. All those good things that the brain's supposed to benefit from, the brain cannot do it. And so you now start to see kids where, ADHD, it's rising. So we need to ask ourselves, how can we use technology to enable our brains to function first and not use technology to actually slow our brain down from really seizing our cognitive potential?
Well, here's my thought. Being an ex-educator.
Okay. Oh yeah, you were a principal.
I was a teacher and principal and whatnot. At what point, with this knowledge that is being evolving now, when and how can we implement this into the school systems? Because if it's not there, if we don't put it there, it may never be absorbed anywhere. So it has to be, and at what level? So we started at kindergarten, preschool, kindergarten, or when?
So that's a great question, because one of the speakers at the event, and the segue is great, is a young kid. He's 8 years old.
Wow.
Sean Ledford. Here's a copy of his book. and Sean, the book is called My Brain, My Beautiful Brain. He's a young kid. I met him when I was I attended a UN event last year in New York, and this kid spoke. He's now spoken on Capitol Hill. He's passionate about the brain. And all he's doing is getting young people around the world to understand. And he will be coming here in person. He's going to be on island for this event. So if you're watching this and you have kids and they want to meet Sean, he will be there. He's a delight to listen to. But what he is trying to say is, my brain, if I don't take care of my brain now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I'm going to lose it. And so you ask, when do we start? We start now. We start to educate kids. We try to tell them, we're not taking the computer from you because we don't want you to have it. It's because your brain, go out and play, go out and have fun. I mean, when you were young, Bob,
You don't see that.
You don't see that, right?
No, I was telling my daughter, I mean, and I said, we just, I taught at Chisbury School, and it's a beautiful school. They just renovated and everything. But I go by there after school sometimes, driving by, and there's nobody on the playground. The playground is beautiful, other than during the school day, after school. And when I taught back in the 60s and the 70s and part of the 80s, those playgrounds after school, you couldn't wait to get to the basketball court or the kickball court or the soccer field. They were loaded. But even after school, when you came home in your neighborhood,
Yes.
you played tag, you played baseball, you played football, you played soccer, you played these games until it was time to come in to eat supper and then go to bed. You do not see kids other than the organized sports. Now, when I say organized, they're either in youth hockey or soccer or gymnastics or dance. That's organized. In other words, it's not picked up by them themselves, like in a neighborhood. It's developed by communities. But what happens? I said, we learned those things in the community. We invented them. We created certain things, how the games, how we had to improvise and whatnot. And kids are not using that today.
They're not using that, and I think the challenge we have, and that speaks to your question, Bob, is if we think of the next 20 years, Sean and his cohorts, if they don't play, if they don't start sort of focusing on the brain, and they can only do it if the parents help, and if the schools help. But for the schools and the parents to help, we have to educate them too, to understand that giving your kid a cell phone sometimes to silence them is not a good thing.
No, it isn't.
I've been to restaurants before, and you see a family of 5.
Everybody's looking on the cell phone.
And everyone is on the cell phone.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine, or not a friend, a gentleman I know in Australia, that he was interviewed because he did this study, and he asked him the question, how much screen time should a kid have? You know what he said? Shocking. 5-year-old up until 5, they don't need screen time. They don't need screens at all. If they're under 10, 30 minutes a day.
I agree.
Okay? And then I think it's like 1 hour. Now, people will say, well, what are they going to do? Well, what did we do?
Thank
when
you.
We were young, right?
Thank you.
Now, and they'll say, well, computers can help them to learn. Yeah, computers can help them to learn, but so will the calculator. And
So can reading a book.
So can reading a book.
Right.
But remember, when we were young, we were not allowed to have calculators in school until late, right?
No, we weren't.
So part of the challenge is we have to find the right balance, because you can't put the genie back in the bottle. But you also have to educate the kids to understand, what are you doing? There are kids today who cannot read a book and remember what they just read.
Exactly.
And that must be scary, okay? But the same kid, if you put him in front of a computer, they can remember. And the other thing that's happening with the brain and these computer screens is all the movement. The kids cannot process it. So what we're doing with
Because you know why? That computer or that screen doesn't allow them to process it, because they can go back to it real quick.
Yeah.
They can constantly go back to it. But if they don't have it, they can't process it. It's not like I read a book or I study something and I keep it, into me. So I'll know at least the basics of what I just read. When you constantly see something and can go back to it, you don't recall that. You don't remember that enough. You know what I mean? You might know where to go get it, but not to retain.
Not to retain.
To share.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember the other day I was listening to a sermon, and this person said, grab your Bible, and this woman said, and grab your Bible. Don't grab your cell phone. Grab your Bible. Right? It's a book. Carry it. Right. Now, I understand people will give all kinds of reasons why they want to, but it's subconscious. What we're doing subconsciously is that we don't realize that when you read a book, it has a different imprint in terms of what you remember than when you scroll and see the same thing on the internet. It's not good at all. So we have a lot of work to do.
One thing I'm going to tell you something. You mentioned that. When I attend a meeting, I'd rather attend a meeting in person than to attend it on Zoom. You know why? I can't see you on Zoom. I see your face, but I don't see what you're doing. I don't see your body movement. I don't see anything. So I can't totally read you. I can't totally get your vibrations. But when I see you in person, and I can see your actions and what you're pretending, I can see when your mind is drifting off to something else. I can read you. I can remember that, you know? And that's the reason why I was at a meeting yesterday, and I told the president of the college, I said, you know, I'd rather all of us come in person than to have Zoom. If you can't make Zoom, if you can't make the meeting, I can understand that. But if we can make it, let's all come together, because that's a team.
That's a team.
You know what I mean? A team is divided if they can't come together.
Let me share something that you will find interesting. So the reason I came up early,
Okay.
On Wednesday I gave a talk to an energy conference that was held in Edgartown.
Okay.
And when I started, it was about the brain and how to unleash human potential. And I was talking about the marrying of AI and HI, human intelligence. And I'm a big promoter of human intelligence. I like AI, but human intelligence. But I started the talk, and the audience was shocked. I said, how many people have a cell phone? And they obviously,
boom, everybody.
Everybody put it up, right? Yeah. And it was a trick question, so they all put it up. I said, okay. I said, keep your cell phone up, take your other hand, move your hand to the off button, and don't put your phone in vibrate. Turn it off. Bob, the look on the face of those people, and these were all executives and professionals from the energy and other sectors. They were looking at me like, what? And I said, turn it off. And I could see some of them hesitating. I said, I'm not going to give this talk until all the cell phones go off. And I said, oh, by the way, joking, I said, because I'm so intelligent, if you don't turn your cell phone off, I will know. Which was a joke. But it was amazing to see the reaction. And I said to them, I'm only going to speak for 30 minutes. There is nothing in the world that's going to change your life in 30 minutes. So turn it off. And afterwards, this lady came up to me. She said, you know what? It was hard, but wow, what a way to start a conversation. I said, because we don't realize when your cell phone is on in vibrate mode, your brain knows it in vibrate mode. So we don't realize, that's why I don't have your cell phones in your bedroom, because when that cell phone is by your bedside table, you might be sleeping, but your brain never sleeps. So your brain is anticipating something. So this is where we get things all messed up. Deep REM sleep, to have those REM sleeps, you have to make sure, you have to make sure you calm the body down, you calm everything down. A cell phone in the bedroom is a reminder to your brain that something is going to happen, is a trigger. So keep it off. And so turn the cell phone off, right? One other observation, and I'll share with your audience. We don't think about it, but it has been out of the day, right? So you have 5 senses. 4 of the senses you have are channeled to you through organs. And those 4 organs, where are they? They're on your head. Your nose, your eye, your ear, and your mouth. The only other sense you have that is not on your head are your hands. So guess what? Everything you do, the 4 key senses you use are centered around your head, which is where your brain is. So think about it. When you lose that brain, those 4 senses are the closest thing to your brain, which is why you shouldn't mess around with your brain.
Amen.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. And listen, anytime you come to the vineyard, on the way, if you want to come back, and in fact, if you don't come back, I'm going to have to come and get you.
Well, I will be coming
Since
back.
I'm the oldest.
Well, I will come back, Bob, because we've made the decision, my wife and I, when I had this idea, some of the guests who cannot be in person said, are we doing this next year? So we're going to make this an annual thing. Mine's across the vineyard. Martha's Vineyard is where we're starting, but the goal is to now syndicate this and take it around the world, because there are vineyards all over the world. And that's what we're going to do. So this is going to be the original place. And this was the first TV interview.
Good.
So you are definitely there, but it's on Sunday the 16th of August. The Sailing Club, and encourage people to show up there and come. Take care of your brain, because that's by the way, your brain is the only organ that cannot be replaced.
That's right.
Every other organ can be replaced except your brain. So take care of your brain, because when you lose it, It's gone.
When you come back next year, call me.
I will.
And if you got 2 or 3 other people, we'll have them sit around with us.
Perfect.
We'll have a good time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
I want to thank you for tuning in to Tank Talk. This is your host, Bob Tankard, saying good evening. This is
This was
I
great.
tell you, I could sit here for about another 5